Well, good afternoon, March for Life UK. I am Josiah, and I'm an abortion survivor. I am so honored to be with you here today as we march for life. I come to you from America, from the great state of Oklahoma. And in case you're wondering where Oklahoma is, it's just above Texas, the big one. And it is so good to be with you today. And in our short time here today, I want to do two things as we share this time together. The first thing I want to do is I want to remind us of a truth that is fundamental to being pro-life. I want to remind us of the reason why we're here today. And the second reason I speak to you today is this: I want to encourage you, I want to call you, I want to challenge you to renew your commitment to what it means to be pro-life. And here is the truth I want to share with us today. You all know it, but we need to repeat it. And it's this truth right here, that all human life is valuable from conception. Now, as a pro-lifer, we all believe that every single human life is valuable from the moment of conception. And for many of you, just like for me, the reason we hold this belief is because we believe that human lives are created in the image of God. And because humanity is created in the image of God, we have inherently within us intrinsically value because we bear the image of our Creator. This belief is fundamental to what it means to be pro-life. It is upon this belief that my parents adopted me and my siblings. I'm one of 12 kids, 10 of us being adopted. And I want you to hear this today. While this is a belief that I have known since I was a small child, a belief that my parents have held and lived out all of my life, this is not a belief that changed my life on the daily basis for the majority of my childhood. You see, even though I grew up in a pro-life home, even though I grew up in a Christian home, even though I knew we held these pro-life beliefs and convictions, this is not something that changed my life on a daily basis. I can tell you, though, when it started to change my life, and it was at the age of 13 years old. You see, at 13, my adopted parents, they thought I was old enough to know more about my adoption story. And at 13, my adopted parents told me about how my birth mother in South Korea, 2 months into her pregnancy with me, decided to have a DNC abortion. This is the type of abortion where the doctor goes into the mother's womb and rips the baby apart and brings them out in pieces. Now, at the time, they thought everything had gone how it was supposed to. They thought everything had gone according to plan, and they sent her home. But it wasn't until a few months later that they realized that I was still very much so alive. I was kept and born later on October 7th, 1995, with a deformed arm, and I was placed in a foster home for about 13 months before I was adopted and brought over to the States, where I was raised as a Presley. Now you can imagine, as a 13-year-old child, that all of a sudden I went from not caring about these beliefs to caring about these beliefs in a very real way. Because all of a sudden, my story, I recognized it was so tied to the truth of what it meant to be pro-life. And while these beliefs came front and center in my life, I will tell you right now, these beliefs did not come front and center in my life in a good way, a right way, or a healthy way. Because all of a sudden, I was blinded by all this anger and all this hatred. How could my birth parents, my own flesh and blood, the people who should have loved me the most, how could they have chosen to do something like have an abortion? Don't they know it's wrong? How could they make such a decision? I blame the fact that I had a deformed arm on their choice for an abortion. There's so much anger towards them for the decisions they made. There's so much hurt. There's so much pain. Growing up as a small child with a deformed arm, I had a lot of self-image issues. I thought my life was not worth anything. I thought my life was less than others. I thought that no matter what I might do, no matter where I might go in life, no matter what I might accomplish, it would never measure up because of my deformity. And while there's anger towards my birth parents for the decision they had made, there's also immense hurt and pain. Because now in my life, I had proof that my life was worthless. I had proof that my life had no value. Because the people who should have loved me the most, my own flesh and blood, they had decided to try and take my life. This is something I struggled with for many years. But that's not a place I stayed. And let me tell you where the change occurred in my life. The change occurred in my life when I was 16 years old, and Jesus pursued me and met me where I was at. And at the age of 16, I surrendered my life to Jesus. And as I started my relationship with Jesus, I began to not find my identity, not find my value, not find my purpose or worth in the things that I thought I could accomplish or the worth I thought others assigned to me, but I found my identity, my value, my purpose, my worth, and what the God of the universe had to say about me, and who my Savior was, and who Jesus was. And as Jesus changed my life, he reminded me of this truth. In Psalm 139, the psalmist says this. He says, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in the secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." I've reminded of my value and worth to my Creator. A passage of Scripture I'd heard maybe 1,000,000 times, but it began to ring true in my life. But not only did I recognize this truth in my life, but I also began to recognize this truth in the life of the unborn. That not only is my life valuable because I'm a human being created in the image of God, but all unborn babies' lives are valuable because they're human beings created in the image of God. Now here's the thing though, we can't stop there. Because while I believe that about my life, while I believe that about the unborn's life, I had also been holding on to anger and hatred in my own life towards my birth parents, towards anybody on the pro-choice side, to anybody on the other side of the argument, towards the abortion doctor, towards post-abortive women and men. I'd held anger and hatred towards them. But as God reminded me of the truth of my value to him as a human being created in his image, as God reminded to me the value of the unborn's lives as human beings created in the image of God, I was also reminded of the value of my birth parents, her human beings created in the image of God. I was reminded of the value of the abortion doctor whose life is valuable because they're created in the image of God, of the pro-choice activist whose life is valuable because they are created in the image of God. And here's the thing we must recognize today, and we have to remember today. We hold this belief that all human life is valuable from conception because they are human beings created in the image of God. That has to extend past conception to every single person we come into contact with. We have to hold this truth close, this belief close. And for me, as I began to be changed by this truth, it looked like beginning to share my story. In Proverbs 31, we're told to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, to speak rightly for all who are destitute. And James 1, we're told this, that pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to care for the orphan and widow in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. It's not just about holding those beliefs, but it's about acting on these beliefs. It's about living these beliefs out in our everyday life. And when I think about somebody who lived out these beliefs in their everyday life, I think about my adopted parents, Randy and Kathy Presley, who owed nothing to me or any of my siblings, yet they chose to adopt us. They chose to give us a home, a family, a life. And I want to call you to memory. I want to remind you of this truth today, but I don't want us to just stop by reminding ourselves of these truths, I want us to call you to renew your conviction, your commitment to these truths. And here's how I want to do it, in 3 different ways. The first thing I want you to take away from today is this: to renew your commitment to what it means to be pro-life. First, believe the truth that all human life is valuable from conception. And start with yourself. First, believe that truth about yourself. There are many here today. There are many here today who I'm sure you're standing here and deep down you don't believe your life is valuable. Whatever the circumstances may be, the situations might be, but whatever it is, something has happened in your life, or maybe you are standing here today and you don't believe that your life is worth living, that your life is valuable. Let me tell you something. The reason we're here is because all life is valuable, and that includes your life. Believe that truth about yourself. Believe that truth about the neighbor standing next to you. Believe that truth about these beautiful folks right over here to your right. Believe that truth about the unborn. Their lives are valuable. But don't just believe that truth. Here's the second thing: to recommit, to renew your commitment to what it means to be pro-life. Speak that truth into any sphere that you find yourself in. We all have a sphere of influence. You all have a sphere where when you leave here today, you will go back to the places you've come from, to the families, to the friends, to the workplaces, to the schools, to the spheres of your influence. Speak that truth of life into whatever sphere you go home into today. And don't just speak that truth. Find a way to act on that truth. Believe it, speak it, act on it. Find a way to live this out daily in your lives. Maybe when you go home, there are conversations you need to have on behalf of a loved one who's not yet been born. Maybe when you go home today, there's conversations that you need to have for a grandchild, for a niece, for a nephew, for a sibling, for a loved one who has yet to be born. Find a way to act. When I think of a way to act, I think of my parents. Again, Randy and Kathy Presley, who you would never know if you ever even met them, whose names you have never heard today, you'll probably never hear again. But these people, these faithful followers of Jesus, they were faithful to live out their pro-life convictions, and it has changed my world. It has changed the worlds of my siblings. And remember this: even if in your working, you're doing, you're acting, even if you do not change the worlds of the masses, even if you only change one world of one person, it matters and it's worth it, because that person matters and is worth it. Believe it, speak it, act on it. I want to leave you with this final thought today. So I have the privilege of being married to my beautiful wife, Bethany, and we have 2 daughters. We have a 2-year-old named Julia and a 6-month-old named Audrey. And every time when I look at these children, when I look at my beautiful daughters and I think about it, what it means to be pro-life, I'm reminded of 2 things. The first thing I'm reminded of the faithfulness of pro-lifers who have come before me. The faithfulness of pro-lifers like Randy and Kathy Presley and so many others who, because of them and their faithfulness to be faithful to care for the one, I stand here today with 2 beautiful daughters. I'm reminded of their faithfulness. But I'm also, listen to this, I'm also reminded of my calling as a father, as a follower of Jesus, as a human being who lives on this planet to leave a better world for the generations to come behind us. And each and every one of us here, we have a responsibility, we have a call to leave a better world for the generations coming behind us. We have a responsibility, a call to leave a world that is for life, not against life. We have a responsibility to leave a world with more lives, not less lives. And so with that, I would encourage you to keep that in front of you every day as you leave this place. Your calling to save the next generation. Thank you, March for Life UK. God bless.